Hello there. I'm a woman who'll be turning 41 this year. I have one daughter and one son. I have a husband named Ralph, but we only spend time with each other on the weekends. That started about 3 years ago. Normally, a family is able to live in the same house together, not us. Unfortunately, due to my husband's job, we can only see each other on the weekend. He was relocated pretty far away for work and spends his weekdays living on his own. When his company told him he'd be relocating, my youngest child wasn't even 1 year old. I asked my company if I could be relocated closer to where my husband was being placed. I even thought about quitting. In the end, I couldn't do anything. Plus, I was lucky enough to have my mother right around the corner who was always willing to watch the kids. Seeing each other on the weekends was our only option moving forward. We knew it wouldn't be permanent. It was hard to adjust with him out of the house at first. Every Friday night, after my husband finished work, he drove nearly 6 hours back home. He'd make the same 6-hour trip back to where he was staying every Sunday night. He hated living by himself. He said it was lonely and there was nothing to do. On Monday, he was already looking forward to Friday night when he could come back and see us again. He'd call me every night and say how much he missed the kids. We were limited to seeing each other on video calls for the time being. It wasn't ideal, but it was the best we could do for the time being. In fact, we were lucky we even had the option to video call each other. If this would happen back when we first started dating, we'd only able to talk on the phone. At least now, we could see each other. It made waiting until the weekend a little less stressful. Before we knew it, 6 months had already passed since we started this new way of life. Sometime in that 6 months, things changed a little bit, though. The time we had for video calling each other got shorter and shorter. My husband was busy with work and often got invited out to dinner with his colleagues. I always let out a sigh when I got the text saying he'd be too busy to talk. He still came home every weekend like before, but there were times he was so exhausted that he'd be in bed basically the whole weekend. The following week, he said that he wanted to start going to the gym at night. We almost completely stopped our daily video calls. To be honest, I figured this day would come. He had to find a way to keep busy, otherwise he'd start to go stir crazy. I bet the gym wore him out. He probably hopped right into the shower after he got home and went to bed after. I was okay with it, I suppose. I was glad he was keeping busy, even if it meant we couldn't talk as much. On the other hand, I wasn't okay with how little he was coming back to the house on weekends. He always had a different reason why he couldn't make it back. For example, he went out for drinks with some work buddies, drank too much, and had a hangover the next day. Another excuse was he went to a coworker's birthday party on Saturday. There was also the classic, "I don't feel good. I want to stay home and rest." It all sounded like excuses covering up how he just didn't want to come back home. I would have understood if it happened just once or twice. It felt strange when all of a sudden he wasn't around the house at all anymore. There had to be another reason for why he wasn't coming home. I bluntly asked him, "Are you seeing another woman?" He was surprised I said that. I wasn't sure if it was because I was dead on or because he couldn't believe I'd think he'd be having an affair. He made a huge fuss over it. "How could you accuse me of that? Do you honestly think that's what's going on? Get that thought out of your head." I said to him, "You're overreacting. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm only asking." I wouldn't ask if that wasn't how it seemed. I wanted to rule out that possibility because right now that's what I feel like is going on. That really set him off. "Shut your mouth. I'm hanging up the phone." I could hear him cursing as he hung up on me. For some reason, he really hated being accused of having another woman. The next weekend, he finally came back. I wonder if me asking about another woman had anything to do with it. However, he didn't play with the kids like he usually did. He spent most of the time alone. Not only that, he kept his phone on him 24/7. I was even more suspicious than before. Normally, he would go back to his place late Sunday night after we put the kids to bed. This time he said he was going back right after he finished lunch. He said he had to go back and rest up for work tomorrow. Apparently, his job had been really stressful lately, and it's been wearing him out. I said to him, coming all the way here every weekend must be taking a lot out of you too. Why don't we come to visit you next weekend? He said, how are you going to get here? The kids are too young to make a trip like that. Coming here with them would be a lot. What if they got sick or something happens while they were here? It's a whole different environment for them. I don't think it's a good idea. I'll keep coming here. I told him, well, I suppose you're right. Bringing the kids would be a bit difficult. They don't even like being in the car to go to the supermarket. It would be a nightmare trying to drive on the highway for that long with them. I guess I wouldn't be able to come visit with them. I called up my mother as soon as I could. I told her I wanted to go to where Ralph was living for work ASAP. I asked her to watch the kids for me next weekend. The weekend came, and just like I suspected, my husband gave me another excuse about why he wasn't coming back. This time, he said he was going to a coworker's wedding. He said it was Saturday morning, so it wouldn't make sense for him to come back home. I told him it was fine. I said he had to be there for his coworkers for those types of special occasions. We could see each other next week. In reality, I was handing off my kids to my mother so I could go check on my husband. He said the wedding was in the morning, so I set out to be there by then. As I was driving, I thought back to when my husband first told me he'd be going away indefinitely for work. I never thought he'd be keeping secrets like this from me while we were apart. I eventually made it to the place my husband was staying. There was a lock with a number pad to get in. I put in the last 4 digits of his phone number, which unlocked the door. I went to go put away my shoes in the shoe closet next to the front door. When I opened it, I saw 2 pairs of matching running shoes. One pair was very obviously a woman's and the other was a man's. I let out a sigh when I saw them. I whispered to myself, I knew it. I put my shoes away and made my way inside. The house was surprisingly clean, even thought it was just a man on his own living there. I searched every square inch of the house. I found it hard to believe that this was a house that a man was living alone in. There were flowers in a vase on the kitchen table. All the spices in his drawers were labeled and organized. When Ralph was living at home, he never did anything like this. I could sense that a woman had been here. I looked in the bathroom. In his shower, there was a bottle of makeup remover. There were even 2 different body washes. Not to mention there were 2 toothbrushes in a cup by the sink. I opened up the cabinets in the kitchen. I found cutesy cups and plates that no man in his right mind would ever buy. Anyone with half a brain would be able to tell a woman picked these out. It was the same story when I went up to his bedroom. When he left, I gave him some bed and sheets we had in the house. However, that's not what was on his bed here. His bed looked more like a 5-star hotel room bed. Silk sheets, fluffy pillows, and a king-sized mattress. Surprisingly, I didn't find any woman's clothes when I looked in his dresser. There were some clothes that a man definitely wouldn't wear, though. I came all the way out here on a hunch. Judging by what I found, it was pretty clear a woman was living, or at the very least spending a lot of time, in this house. I felt completely deflated. An affair wasn't something that just happened to other people. It wasn't something just in movies and TV shows. I never imagined my husband was capable of cheating on me. But then again, people change. He had to have been with someone. That's why he stopped video calling all the time. It also had to be the reason why he stopped coming back every weekend. 1,000 thoughts were running through my head as I walked around the house. Who is this woman? Where did they meet? Does she know that he's a married man? Does she even care? Have they slept together? If so, how many times? I doubted that I could ever go back to living with him again. What if my husband approached me and said he wanted to get divorced? What would I do if I met that woman today? I was lost in thought for a while. All of a sudden, I heard the sound of the lock and door being opened. My stomach dropped and my heart was slamming against my chest. I was so nervous for what was going to happen next. I should have planned for this scenario since it was a very real possibility when I decided to home here. I panicked. I had no idea what my next move was going to be, so I ended up running out the back door and looking through a window from the backyard. I wanted to see if his new woman showed up. I came up with a plan. I had two options. If he came home with his new woman, I'd come into the house and confront them. On the other hand, if my husband really had been at a wedding and he came home alone, I'd play it off like I was there to surprise him and pretend like I knew nothing. In those brief few moments I was looking through the window, I prayed that this was all a misunderstanding. I wanted to see my husband walking through that door by himself. Those prayers went unanswered. There he was, my husband with his arm around a woman, laughing and walking into the house. I haven't seen him look that happy in a long time. He was carrying a big popcorn and soda. It doesn't take a genius to assume they were probably at the movies together. The soda had 2 straws stuck in the lid. Have you seen people who were just friends do something like that? My husband would never share food with me or drink out of the same cup. And yet, there he was, sharing a soda with his new girlfriend. It felt like I had been punched in the stomach. I was furious. I was moments away from walking through the door, picking up the closest object and attacking them both. I swallowed my anger and kept watching. I couldn't afford to lose my cool. I had to collect evidence. They also brought in some shopping bags with them. She started taking out what was inside. She pulled out a shirt and held it up to my husband's chest. I heard her say, "You're going to look so handsome in this. You look great in green. Hurry up, try it on, model it for me." My blood was boiling as I listened. I cursed under my breath at that woman. I said things I've never said to another person before. I surprised myself at what was coming out of my mouth. My husband did what she said. He took off his shirt in front of her and went to go try on his new one. He did a stupid little dance as he was slowly putting on his new shirt. She was laughing and clapping as he did. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't accept what was happening. It didn't feel real. I thought to myself that I had to take a video for proof. When I went to get my phone out of my pocket, I realized I had left it in my bag, which was on couch inside. My luck couldn't have been worse. I had to get this moment on camera. I needed proof of what he was doing. I had to figure out what to do next. I had no other choice. I opened up the door and stormed inside. I went over to my bag, took out my phone, and started recording. My husband and his girlfriend froze when they saw me. I frantically yelled, "Ralph, who is she? Who is this woman?" My husband's eyes were wide open, and his mouth was gaping. "Susan, what are you? Why are you?" He stuttered and couldn't get out a complete sentence. I could see the look of fear in his eyes. The woman spoke up. "Ralph, who is that? Is that your wife? You said she'd never come here because she had to watch your kids." Well, that confirmed it. She knew he was married, but that didn't stop her. I kept recording as I said, "I knew it." "What is all of this? I thought you were going to a wedding. You told me that's why you couldn't come back home. It doesn't look like that's where you've been. Were they giving out popcorn and soda there? Did they give you a new shirt as a parting gift for coming? Who is this woman? Was she a friend of the bride that you picked up at the wedding? Did you think I wouldn't find out? We've only lived apart for a year. It took less than a year for you to abandon your family and find someone new. You can't hide anymore. You're going to regret sneaking behind my back." My husband rushed to put on his shirt and started yelling, "Susan, this isn't what it looks like. I can understand if you're upset, but you've got it all wrong. She means nothing to me. She and I don't have what you and I do. I wasn't out looking for someone new. She and I just happened to meet one day. I just wanted some company. I've been so lonely. Make no mistake. She and I are just friends." As he was talking, the woman started hysterically crying. She slapped my husband in the face. "What? I mean nothing to you. How could you say that? Would you go on a date with someone who means nothing to you? You'd sleep with someone who means nothing to you? How dare you say that? You said I was the only person you loved. You said you only had eyes for me. You told me you threw it all away for me. Your family, your life. You said you'd never leave my side, and now you're going to take it all back? You're two-faced. You're just saying that because your wife is here. I can't believe you could say such hurtful things right in front of me. Were you just using me? You had your fun. Now you're going to toss me aside like everything else in your life? Do you think I'm the type of woman that you can do that to? How could you treat me like this? I could tell that woman had no remorse for what she had done to me and my family. I was stunned by how selfish she was. I went up to her and took a page out of her book. I wound up and slapped her across the face as hard as I could. What did you just say? Why don't you say it one more time? Dates? Sleeping together? He threw away his family, but you said he'd never leave your side? Do you think I'm the kind of woman who would just stand by and let all this happen? You must have no idea how the world works. You don't feel a shred of remorse for what you've done, do you? Is that all? Anything else you want to say, you miserable witch? Are you stupid enough to think he really loves you? A man with a wife and a family. A man you met randomly who won't be here forever. You think he loves you? Do you think he belongs to you? Who do you think you are talking like that in front of his wife? She turned to me, eyes glaring, and swung her fist at me. I grabbed her arm in time to stop her. You have a problem with keeping your hands to yourself, don't you? You'd be making the biggest mistake of your life if you try and hit me again. I guess my husband never told you I was a black belt in karate when I was younger. I used to destroy men twice your size for fun. Settle down, or I'll put you on the ground faster than you can blink. She lowered her hand, but suddenly looked distraught. It didn't seem like she cared that she got caught or that I was screaming at her. It seemed like she was devastated that my husband didn't come to her side to defend her. Even worse, he claimed she meant nothing to him. She turned to my husband with tears in her eyes and asked him, Ralph, don't lie to me. What am I to you? Do you love me? Did you ever love me? Did you mean anything you said to me? Even once? My husband felt me shooting daggers at him with my eyes. He didn't answer her. I answered for him. I bet you did love her. I'll take your silence as a yes. Everything's all out on the table now. There's no use lying anymore. Let's be honest. Did you have fun going back and forth between lovers behind my back? What would give this scumbag woman the idea that you loved her? What did you tell her? My husband looked up from the ground and said, No! None of that is true. She's just a drinking buddy. We met each other at a bar. That's all she is. A friend to drink with and keep me company. Do you think I'm the only person she's like this with? She has a million guys and she thinks they all love her. I'm just one of them. I couldn't help looking for a companion. I've been so lonely here. Like I told you, we're nothing more than friends. You think I would fall in love with a random person I went out drinking with once in a while? Who does that? You have to believe me. You said to be honest, so I'm being honest. I swear to you, I'll never see her again if that's what you want. The woman looked like she was about to have a heart attack. She leered at my husband for a few seconds, then gathered all her stuff. She ran out of the house crying. My husband turned towards her and made it seem like he was going to chase after her. I said, Oh, you're going to run after her? He said, Oh, no, I was just going to lock the door. I fired back. It locks on its own. I've only been here for an hour, and even I know that. He turned around and said, Oh, yeah, you're right. It does. He walked over to the couch and slumped down onto it. I put a chair right in front of where he was, sat down in it, and started my interrogation. Tell me how long you've been seeing her. Tell me what your relationship really is. Don't try and lie to me. Show me your phone and the text between you two. Tell me everything. I'm not leaving until I know everything, my husband responded. I'm not hiding anything. I already told you everything there is to know. I was at a bar with some coworkers one night. A lot of my coworkers are away from home just like I am. We all went out looking to meet new people outside of work. That girl came up to me and complimented me on my tie, so we started talking. We had a lot in common. We both liked exercising. It was so nice to make a friend out here and talk to someone other than a coworker. She helped me get out of a real mental funk. When my coworkers asked if I wanted to go out for drinks again, I decided to invite her along too. She would come out with us every time we went for drinks from then on. I asked him, so, how did your drinking buddy end up at your house? He said, well, she kept saying she wanted to see where I lived. I finally gave in and brought her here once, but then she kept showing up. Some of the guys at work who I go out with said the same thing about people they became friends with when we'd go out. Those types of women get attached to men with money, and then they're hard to get rid of. I didn't want to see her anymore, but she kept calling me and coming over. I didn't really have a reason not to see her, plus I was feeling lonely. I asked him one final time if that was the truth. I had been recording everything he was saying. I asked if I could show that woman everything he said. I could tell by his face he didn't want that to happen. Don't you think that's a little harsh? She thinks I love her for some reason. I think it would make her go ballistic if she heard that coming from my mouth. I don't think it would be a good idea for her to hear it. She's crazy. Who knows what she would do? I demanded for him to tell me her name and her phone number. I said if he didn't, it would prove he's hiding something and everything he just said would be a lie. He reluctantly told me her name and number. Her name was Rachel. I immediately sent the recording to her. I looked through my husband's phone too. Unfortunately, I didn't find anything out of the ordinary. Was he telling the truth? Were they really just friends? Or did he just erase all the evidence of the affair he was having with her? Another possibility was that they spent most of their time together. If that were the case, there wouldn't be much to find on his phone. I couldn't find anything conclusive. My husband looked really torn up over everything. He sat with his head in his hands on the couch. I told him what I decided. I said I would be pursuing legal action against the woman he was having an affair with. Honestly, Ralph, I don't believe a word of what you've been telling me. I don't think our marriage is going to recover from this. I have a million things going through my head right now. I can't focus on anything. I'm going home and thinking long and hard about everything. One more thing. If you see her again, even once, you'll ruin any chance you have of saving this marriage. I'll divorce you in an instant. Don't think I won't. There's nothing you can do to change my mind. I made my warning crystal clear. To my surprise, my husband got off the couch, put on his coat and said he wanted to come home with me. He said he missed the kids and that it's been a while since he really spent time with them. I wanted to leave on my own, but thinking about our kids and how they missed their dad, I didn't want to come back without him. We both went back to our house together. I will say, Ralph really made up for lost time with the kids. I'd never seen him play with them that much before. When I saw him running around our house with our children, it made me think back to the way things used to be. I was really feeling mixed emotions. I spoke with my husband before he went back. My mind hasn't changed. I'm going to try and press charges against her. I haven't forgiven you, and I don't know if I will. But I can tell you feel remorse. To be totally honest, seeing you play with the kids made me emotional. It was very touching. For the time being, you're basically on parole with me. You better be on your best behavior. I'm still deciding whether or not we're gonna get a divorce. I want things to be like they used to. I want to have a video call with you every day. I want you to come home every weekend. Most importantly, I want you to try and negotiate with your job to let you come back home. He said he understood. I'll do whatever you say, he said solemnly. Just like I planned, I sued that woman for damages she caused with her affair with my husband. We settled before the case went to court. I received half the amount I was originally suing her for. I was actually surprised about how smooth the whole thing went. I'm not sure if that woman was rich or something, but I received the money from her right away. My husband kept his promise. He video called me every day. Not only that, he came home every single weekend like he was doing before. Things really felt like they'd gone back to normal. It wasn't perfect, but it was just what I was hoping for. About a year had passed after finding out about my husband's affair. He was finally able to return home for good. We finally didn't have to be constrained to seeing each other on the weekends anymore. The first Saturday he was back home, he got a phone call. He picked up the phone and went white as a ghost. All he said was, "Okay, I'll be right there." I asked him what happened. He said, "One of my coworkers got into a car accident. I have to go to see him as soon as possible. I don't know if I'll be home or not tonight. Don't wait up for me." Immediately, I was suspicious. "Where are you going? What do you mean you might not be home tonight?" He told me he was in a rush to leave, so he'd call me later to explain everything. Something didn't feel right. In my mind, when someone gets into a car accident, they always notify the family first. If the person ends up in the hospital, it's always the family that has to rush there first and make sure the person's okay. After the family visits, then that's when the person's friends are notified, if at all. What I didn't understand was why he had to rush there so quickly if it was just his friend. Something wasn't right. Most of all, I was most suspicious of how he said he might not be home tonight. I opened up my laptop and opened the tracking feature on my husband's phone to find out where he was going. After his affair, he turned on his location services on his phone. He did it to try and build back his trust. He gave me the password to his computer too. I could always check to see where he was. I locked on to my husband's location. It looked like he was headed towards where he used to live for his job. He eventually stopped at a university hospital. I guess he was telling the truth. He was visiting someone at the hospital. I felt a little at ease that he wasn't lying to me. That wasn't to say everything was normal. He stayed at that hospital all day and all night without leaving. I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. I sent him a text asking him to tell me what was going on. I eventually got a call from him in the middle of the night. He said his friend passed away. He wouldn't be able to come back tonight. He seemed really shook up about it. I wanted to ask him, who was it? How did they get into the car accident? But I figured it was better to save those questions for later. I could tell he was devastated. I told him to take all the time he needed and hung up the phone. I don't know why, but even after talking with him, something still felt off. Something didn't sit right with me about the whole situation. I decided to go to the hospital he was at to see for myself what was going on. When I got to the hospital, I asked about any patients who passed away that day. I asked about where the funeral service was being held for them. The nurse told me she couldn't disclose that information to anyone but family members. But she said there was a funeral home on the other side of the building. She said to go try there and see if I could find who I'm looking for. I went over to see what I could find. There was almost no one there. It was so quiet that it didn't seem like a place for a wake. I looked to see if there was a name written at the reception for the deceased. There was. When I read who it was, I dropped to my knees. It was Rachel, the woman my husband was having an affair with. I was literally floored when I saw it was her who passed away. Immediately I thought, who let my husband know about this? Was she the one who called him to say what happened? I felt sick to my stomach thinking about it. I got to my feet and mustered the strength to go into the funeral home. I immediately saw my husband. He was sitting in the front row closest to the coffin. As I walked forward, I saw there was a sign that said reserved for family on the bench he was sitting on. That's not all. He was holding a baby which was probably not even a year old. It was all so much to take in at once. I walked further into the room without knowing what was going to happen next. People were coming up to my husband to greet him. He and I made eye contact. I walked up to him and asked him what was going on. He said he didn't quite understand himself what was going on. He said he didn't know what he was going to do. A woman who was standing near us overheard him and came up to us. "Don't you feel any responsibility? What do you mean you don't know what you're going to do? What's wrong with you? Even if you two weren't married by law, you still have responsibilities. Who's going to look after your child now that Rachel's gone and you're not around anymore?" I asked her who she was. I also asked her to clarify what exactly she was talking about. First, she told me her name and who she was in relation to Rachel. It turns out she worked at the same place Rachel did. They went out together and she was at the bar the night Rachel and my husband met. She said she's been following their situation for some time. She called my husband a coward for not manning up and taking responsibility for anything he did. She told me about how they were inseparable when they used to see each other. He told Rachel that if she died, he'd follow right behind her. But when she told him she was pregnant, he tried to disappear. Even after Rachel had the baby, my husband refused to believe the child was his. He told her there was no way it was his. It had to belong to another guy. Rachel's friend knew her well. They often saw each other outside of work and were really close. She knew the only man Rachel slept with was my husband. That didn't matter to my husband. He denied the fact the kid was his before and after it was born. Rachel insisted it was, but nothing she said convinced him to believe her. So she got a DNA test. The result would prove to my husband that he was the father. The night she was set to pick up the results, she was speeding on the highway, which was where she ended up in the horrible car accident that led to her death. She was rushed to the hospital after being pulled from the wreckage. But unfortunately, she didn't make it through the night. The room felt like it was spinning. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought she and my husband completely cut ties with one another. But apparently they never stopped seeing each other. Even more, later on, when I looked into my husband's bank account, I found out he was the one who paid for her legal fees when I sued her. He used that money as a way to make up for what happened. He begged her to see him again. Then, she wound up pregnant. He'd come home and play with his kids and made it seem like everything was normal. He was a pathological liar. I wondered what else he's lied to me about throughout his life. The only thing I'm grateful that woman did was get the DNA test for her child. My coward husband tried to run off to avoid the truth about the kid. Up until a year ago, I thought my husband needed to be around for our kids. They were young, and I felt that it was important for them to spend time with him. Now, it's a completely different story. I never wanted to see him again. I never wanted to bring him around my children again. Even now, my husband insisted that child wasn't his. I said one final thing to him before I left for good. Be a man. You can't run from your problems forever. That kid is yours and you need to face reality. My husband was the scum of the earth. I couldn't bear to look at him for another second. Currently, I'm in the process of filing for divorce. Not only that, I'm going to sue him for adultery and damages for the stress he put me through. If only I had known back then how things would turn out. I had no idea my husband would be such a horrible, deceitful person. I truly mean it when I say I never want to see him again. I don't care what he says or what happens. It doesn't matter. I don't want to see his face for the rest of my life. Things were over for us, but he still had a little baby he needed to care for. For that child's sake, I hope he can step up and take responsibility to raise it. Thank you all for staying around to listen to my long story. I hope you all stay happy and healthy.